My sister got a brand new Tesla for her graduation. Then I opened my gift, a stack of cleaning supplies. Mom smiled. It's time you help around the house. That day was Sophia's college graduation. My little sister, the darling of the family, stepped out the door in a cream silk dress and brand new heels, which Mom said were a well-deserved reward for graduating with average grades. The front yard buzzed with voices. White and gold balloons floated around, a huge banner read, "Congratulations, Sophia." There was a 3-tier cake, and even a TikTok crew filming the big surprise gift moment. I stood quietly in a corner, holding a glass of water, trying to disappear into the background of a celebration I had never been given. My father walked out holding car keys. A white Tesla Model Y waited by the gate, its giant red bow nearly the size of a serving tray. He handed the keys to Sophia, his voice firm and grand like he was passing the torch to a new generation. "You're going to do big things," he said. Applause erupted, cheers echoed. My sister hugged him tightly and turned to Mom, her eyes shining. Cameras rolled. Flashes lit up the yard like fireworks. And me? I stood just 10 feet away, listening to the quiet sound of my own heart breaking. A little later, my mom approached and handed me a small box wrapped in old newspaper. "This is for you, Isabel," she said, her lips curled in a half-smile, half-grimace. I opened it. Inside were a bottle of dish soap, a rubber glove, a mini broom, a roll of paper towels, and a note. "Remember to clean the living room before the weekend." I looked up at her. She smiled gently. "You're the best at cleaning in this whole house." Jaden, my younger brother, stood nearby and didn't miss his cue. "Now you can clean my room too, right?" he said, laughing. Others chuckled. It was the final needle to the heart. I didn't respond. I simply placed the box on the table, turned, and walked upstairs. 15 minutes later, I came down with a suitcase. No one asked where I was going. No one stopped me. Not a single voice called out. I opened the door myself and walked out of the house that had made me invisible for the past 23 years. 3 days later, while I was making coffee in the tiny apartment I had rented, my phone started buzzing nonstop. Mom called. Then Dad. Then Jaden. Message after message poured in. "Where are you? Come home now." I stared at the screen and smiled. For the first time in a long while, I felt real. I felt like I existed. Have you ever felt invisible in your own home, surrounded by the people who are supposed to love you the most? Leave a comment and let me know where you're watching this from, just so I know there's someone out there who feels the way I do. My name is Isabel. I'm 23, the eldest of 3 siblings. Since I was 16, I've worked part-time after school, not because I was ambitious or looking for experience, but because my mom said, "This family needs your help." While my friends were being picked up by their parents for shopping trips or hanging out in coffee shops, I was waiting tables at a local bakery, then rushing home to cook, clean, tutor Jaden, feed Sophia's cat, and fold laundry for Mom. And that cycle repeated itself for 7 years. But the funny thing is, in my family's eyes, I was never doing enough. When Sophia got a B+, they threw a celebration. One time I brought home a certificate of achievement, and all my mom said was, "Good. But don't get complacent, you're the oldest, you have to try twice as hard." No praise, no gift, not even a hug. Just invisible titles I was forced to carry. The eldest, the role model, the one who endures, the backbone. Sophia was different. She was called the princess since she was little. She always had new dresses for every holiday, while I wore hand-me-downs. When Sophia wanted ballet lessons, Dad paid 3 months of tuition without hesitation. When I asked to join a free weekend art class, Mom said, "Focus on school. Art doesn't feed anyone." On Sophia's 18th birthday, my parents threw her a party with a professional photographer and a pastel pink backdrop. Me? My 18th birthday happened to fall on the day Jaden had a cold, and Mom said, "Let's postpone. There's too much going on at home." Jaden, the youngest, is the kind of kid who hates studying, is obsessed with gaming, and rarely cleans his room. But he never got scolded for more than 5 minutes. Once, he broke the television from playing too hard. Mom just sighed and said, "He's still young. Don't hurt his feelings." Meanwhile, I once burned the side of a soup pot because I forgot to turn off the stove during online class and got yelled at the whole evening. When Jaden stayed up late watching live streams, Mom made him warm milk. When I stayed up late studying, Mom said I was irresponsible with my health. I used to believe that if I just tried hard enough, if I worked more quietly, never talked back, never asked for anything, I would finally be acknowledged. But no. What I got instead were the same phrases, repeated over and over. "You're the older sister, you should give in to your siblings. You're the one who handles things best. Without you, I don't know how I'd manage this house." That last one sounds like gratitude, but in truth, it was how they kept me tethered with responsibility, not love. I remember one time I had a fever close to 102. Still, I pushed myself to cook dinner because Mom was busy taking Sophia to get her hair done. As I sat down at the table, my body trembling, sweat soaking my back, all Mom said was, "You probably stayed up too late. You need to take care of your health so you can keep helping the family." Then she ladled soup into Jaden's bowl. No one asked if I was okay. I don't blame Sophia or Jaden. Because the ones who planted the seed of favoritism weren't them, it was our parents, the ones who placed their trust in the wrong hands. The ones who gave the best to those who demanded it and assumed that people like me could just endure it. But they forgot one thing: the one who endures the longest is usually the first to walk away and never looks back. Sophia's graduation took place on a bright, sunny Saturday afternoon, but for me, it was the coldest day I've ever felt inside. Sophia graduated with a GPA of 2.6. Not excellent, not terrible, but to my parents, it was the greatest achievement in the history of our family. For over a month, Mom had been planning the celebration. Hiring an event planning company, building a small stage in the front yard, printing a pastel pink backdrop with Sophia's name, stringing balloons along the fence, and setting up a live stream camera for Facebook. Captions flashed across the screen, "So proud of my daughter," complete with heart and firework emojis. The guests poured in: Sophia's classmates, Dad's colleagues, distant relatives, and neighbors from all around. Each person received a cupcake printed with Sophia's beaming face in her graduation gown. Mom was busy rushing back and forth, fixing every corner of the decorations. Dad checked the sound system. And me? I was assigned to kitchen duty, watching the oven and serving drinks to the guests. I didn't question it. I was used to it by now. Working quietly had become second nature, an unspoken part of the big sister role I had been living almost my entire life. Once everyone was seated, Dad stepped onto the small stage, microphone in hand, and his voice rang out with pride. "Today, we're gathered here to celebrate our beloved daughter Sophia, the one who's going to do great things in the future." The crowd erupted in applause. Sophia stood beside him, her hair curled softly, her face perfectly made up, smiling like a princess being crowned. After the speech, Dad turned around and pulled a car key from his pocket, a crisp red bow tied around it. He nodded toward the gate. The cover was pulled off, revealing a gleaming white Tesla Model Y, its tires still brand new, license plates freshly printed. Sophia screamed, jumped up and down, and threw her arms around Dad. "Thank you, Dad, thank you, Mom. I can't believe it." I stood behind the scenes, near the buffet table, holding a glass of orange juice, feeling my heart sink slowly, inch by inch. I wasn't jealous. I'd long accepted that the spotlight wasn't mine. But a part of me still hoped for just a word, a hug, a quiet "Thank you, Isabel, for always carrying the weight no one else sees." Just one word, to know that I wasn't invisible. After the gift presentation, Mom walked toward me. In her hand was a small box, clumsily wrapped in wrinkled brown recycled paper. "This is for you," she said in a flat tone. "It's more practical. No need for all that fluff." I reached out to take it, forcing a smile. I unwrapped the paper and opened the lid. Inside was a large bottle of dish soap, a pair of yellow rubber gloves, a foldable mini mop, and a roll of paper towels. On top was a handwritten note, "Remember to mop the living room floor before I get home." I looked up at her. She smiled gently, as if she'd just handed me the most wonderful gift in the world. "You're the best housekeeper we've got." I swallowed hard, pushing back the tears that burned behind my eyes. Jaden, my younger brother, stood nearby, leaning against the table, biting into a cupcake, squinting as he called out, "Perfect gift. Now you can clean my room too, right? And maybe scrub the sink while you're at it." A few guests chuckled, thinking it was just a light-hearted family joke. But I didn't laugh. I looked at the gift in front of me, at the way my worth had been packaged. Not like a car, not like a heartfelt thank you, but like unpaid labor wrapped in denial. In that moment, I didn't scream, I didn't cause a scene, I didn't ruin the party. I simply closed the box gently and placed it on the table. I walked into the house in silence. I pulled my suitcase from the closet, packing with trembling hands. I didn't know where I would go, but I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't stay for even 1 minute longer. I rolled my old suitcase quietly across the tiled steps and walked out of that house like I was just finishing another shift, not like I was leaving behind 23 years of being overlooked, defined, and suffocated by 2 words. The eldest. I didn't take much with me. Just a few sets of clothes, my laptop, a notebook, and one thing my mother had never touched: a brown leather journal I used to write in on nights when no one remembered that I, too, needed to be held. On the living room table, I left a note. The handwriting was steady, the ink clean and deliberate. "If everything I've done is never enough to be seen, then I'll disappear completely so you can finally understand what it means to miss me." I left at 7 p.m. The sky was still bright, a soft breeze blew. The house echoed with music and laughter. No one turned to look, no one called after me. As if I had never existed in their picture at all. 30 minutes later, I was on bus 4-5 heading south across the city toward a tiny apartment belonging to Riley, the one best friend I was lucky to have. Riley knew everything from the nights I skipped meals just to finish chores, to the times I canceled hangouts because Mom called, asking me to watch the house for a bit. When I knocked 3 times in the way we always did, the door opened. Riley saw me red-eyed, gripping my suitcase, and didn't ask a thing. They just pulled me into the kind of hug that holds your whole body in place. "Come in," they whispered. "You don't have to say anything, I already know." I sat curled up on the sofa, wrapped in the soft blanket Riley brought me. The room glowed under warm yellow light, filled with the gentle scent of peppermint and a silence that didn't judge. No pressure. No demands. Riley placed 2 cups of tea on the table and sat across from me. "You know," they said slowly, "I've wished you'd leave that place for a long time. You've been the mother of that family since you were 12. Ever since the day your mom said, 'You cook dinner, I have to take Sophia to ballet class.'" I let out a quiet, sad laugh. "Back then, I thought I was helping." "You were," Riley said. "But they didn't see that, they used you." After a pause, Riley reached for my hand, their gaze firm and clear. "Isabel, you weren't born to carry the world's weight. It's time you live for yourself. Not as the caretaker, but as someone who gets to be free." I nodded. Something inside me cracked open like a thin layer of ice breaking under the first sunlight. That night, I slept in a tiny spare room, next to the soft rhythm of Riley's breathing from across the hallway. No Mom yelling to wake me up. No Sophia pounding on the door asking, "Did you take my stuff?" No Jaden groaning about being hungry at 2 a.m. Just me. In a bed that wasn't familiar, but for the first time, it was mine. And that was my first real victory. Quiet, small, but heavy with meaning. After that night, I rented a small room on the 3rd floor of an old apartment building. The walls were peeling, and the hallway always smelled faintly of burnt oil. But to me, it was a world of my own, the first time in my life I lived in a place where I could close the door and belong only to myself. I started with a part-time job at a small cafe a few blocks from home. The pay wasn't great, but it was steady and, more importantly, No one there called me the eldest, and no one told me I had to sacrifice for the family. There, I was simply Isabel, a 2-3-year-old girl who loved making lattes and writing customers' names in soft, slanted cursive on their cups. At the same time, I revived an old dream I had folded away when I was 17 making handcrafted skincare. Back then, I used to mix clay masks, essential oils, and herbs for Riley to try. People said they smelled calming, felt gentle. But Mom just said, that stuff's a waste of time. Focus on school. Now, there was no one left to tell me to give it up. I spent my evenings after work testing recipes, packaging small jars, photographing them in natural light, and posting them on Instagram. I named the shop Her Way. Not perfect skin, not glow and company, but her way, because I wanted every woman who had ever been bossed around, controlled, or trimmed down to fit others' expectations to have a space where she could do things her way. At first, no one noticed the shop. But then, I began writing little stories with each post. Not product ads, just pieces of myself. Stories about a girl once called, the one who endures the best, a girl who was gifted dish soap instead of congratulations, who started working at 16 but was never once told, "Thank you." And somehow, those words began to touch something in people. Comments started to appear. Your story feels exactly like mine. Thank you for writing this. I thought I was the only one. You don't know it, but your post gave me the courage to say no to my mom yesterday. I read every word, quietly crying. Not because I was sad, but because, for the first time, everything I had silently endured didn't feel meaningless. It became a bridge, an invisible thread, connecting women who had been used up by the very people who claimed to love them most. I launched a Facebook group called We Are Not Just Daughters. Every week, I'd post a short reflection about a small, quiet milestone. The first time I bought something without asking my mom's opinion, the first dinner I ate alone without feeling guilty, the first time I ignored my brother's demand for help. The group quickly hit 1,000 members, and each woman had a story with the same core. I used to believe I had to be good to be loved. Meanwhile, the orders started growing. From a few jars of cream per week, I sold dozens, then hundreds. I taught myself how to manage inventory, care for customers, and build a financial plan. I'd never studied business, but the patience I'd gathered from years of being the big sister of the house turned out to be the most valuable skill I had. Every night, I lay on my thin mattress, staring up at the cracked ceiling, feeling a strange kind of peace. No one knocked to ask me to cook. No one asked, "Did you do laundry for the family?" No one looked at me like I only existed to serve. I was no longer living to please anyone. I remember once, Riley asked me, "Do you feel richer now?" I laughed. Not in money, but in breath. In the feeling of being able to breathe without guilt. I've never felt this rich before. And slowly, I began to understand. Freedom isn't having a large bank account, it's not being afraid when your mom's name shows up on the caller ID. Freedom isn't owning a beautiful apartment, it's being able to say no to a family dinner without feeling like a bad daughter. Freedom is walking into your own home not to scrub the floors but to sit down on the couch and know that you deserve to rest. I'm not someone important yet, but I am finally myself. And for someone who was once seen only as the one who handles the housework, that already feels like a different life. A life I chose. A life with no need for Teslas, fireworks, or live streams. Just me whole. And free. 3 days after I left, on a gloomy afternoon, my phone began to ring. The screen lit up with a name I knew by heart, Mom. I stared at it, heart still. I didn't pick up. A minute later, a message came and then another call. Finally, I let it go to voicemail. When I played it back, her voice was cracked, strained, like she was trying to hold on to the last thread of something fraying fast. "Isabel, where are you? I'm sorry if I made you upset that day, but now the house, everything's falling apart. Sophia doesn't know how to handle things. The place is a mess, no one's cleaning. Your dad is stressed, not eating. I don't know what to do anymore. Please come back. We need you. I need you." I sat on my wooden chair, listening to every word, every pause, without really feeling anything, except a cold shiver running quietly down my spine. Need me? After all these years of only seeing Sophia? After making me cook while running a fever? After never once calling me by name with the softness you reserved for her? This time, I didn't answer. I didn't write back. No anger, no revenge. Just silence. Because silence was the only thing they were never prepared to face. The next day, a message from Dad came through. Short, cold, and coded in duty just like him. You're the most mature daughter. It's your responsibility. Don't leave your mother and siblings to handle everything. I let out a bitter laugh. Responsibility. A word so familiar it had grown numb. It had always been a velvet rope around my neck, sweet on the outside, but suffocating within. I used to believe that if I carried enough responsibility, I'd finally be valued. But the truth is, the better I was, the more they piled on. And now, the moment I stop, everything collapses. Not because I'm selfish, but because they never once learned how to stand without me. Then came Jaden. His message arrived at 2 a.m. Thought you were so capable, huh? The whole house is a mess. Sophia's been crying all day because she has no one to help her. Mom's like a ghost. Dad's furious. Everything fell apart the second you left. I read every word. My heart didn't tremble. My hands didn't shake. I just felt light. Strangely light. So this was what it came down to. The same house that once proudly declared they didn't need me, now unraveling just because I walked away in silence. Then another message from Jaden. How could you be this selfish? You're the older sister and you're just leaving us like this. I didn't reply right away. I held my phone and stepped onto the tiny balcony where a pot of lavender sat, drying under the harsh summer sun. The wind moved through my hair. Streetlights flickered faintly in the distance. And I thought about all those years, me scrubbing the floors late into the night while Jaden played video games on the couch, Sophia yelling about lost things, and Mom turning to scold me instead, Dad saying, "You have to learn to sacrifice. That's the mark of a mature child." Ova. No one ever asked if I was tired. No one ever asked if I was okay. And now that I finally chose to stand up for myself, they called it selfishness. I unlocked my phone, typed a short message, and sent it to all three of them, Dad, Mom, and Jaden. I am not a burden bearer. I am a human being. If the house is falling apart now, it's because none of you ever learned how to live without me, and now it's time to learn. Then I turned off my phone. I didn't wait for a response. 2 days later, Riley pushed open my bedroom door, holding a bag of pastries and chewing while talking. Some lady called me last night crying, sounded a lot like your mom. She was begging for your new number. I said, Isabel's busy living her life now. I burst out laughing, not because it was funny, but because, for the first time, I felt protected. Not because I sacrificed, but because I was finally seen as someone worth protecting. The next day, I opened the We're Not Just Daughters group and posted a new entry. 3 days after I walked out of my family's house with a small suitcase and a heart full of cracks, my mother called and said, "Come back, we need you." But I knew. It wasn't about love. It was about the absence of someone who used to serve. And I didn't go back. Because I had finally begun to understand. No one has the right to define you by what they need from you. If you've ever received a call like that too, please don't feel guilty. It's not selfishness. It's living in alignment with who you are. That post was shared over 9,000 times in just 3 days. My inbox flooded with messages from women I had never met. Thank you for putting my feelings into words. This post saved me from going back one more time. I cried. But this time, it was because I finally felt seen. I read every response, and something warm bloomed in my chest, not because I was being praised, but because I knew I wasn't alone anymore, and the silence I once carried had become a voice. 2 weeks later, the calls and texts from my family were no longer sudden storms. They became background noise like the ticking of a clock in a quiet room. Every day, there was at least one message from Mom, Dad, or Jaden. Each with a different tone, but all saying the same thing. Come home. End of chapter. Mom cried. Dad blamed. Jaden sent snide remarks like, "Wow, you seem to be living it up while the rest of us struggle." I had stayed silent long enough. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I wanted to see would they still talk when there was no one left to command? Then one night, after packaging my last order of the day, I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and wrote an email. Not long. Not angry. Not cruel. Just the truth, raw, clear, and unapologetic. From Isabel. To Mum, Dad, Jaden. Subject: I'm not coming back. I'm no longer the one holding this family together. I'm not the last pin keeping everything from collapsing. I am a person, not your emotional maid. Not the substitute for your lack of responsibility. Not a shadow that cleans and stays silent. I've done enough. Since I was 12, when Mom made me cook dinner because Sophia had dance class. At 17, when Dad told me to quit tutoring so I could take care of Jaden. And at 23, when I received a bottle of dish soap instead of a congratulations. I hope you all learn how to live without me. And I hope you understand love can't be kept alive through burdens. Only through respect. Isabel. I hit send. My hands didn't shake. No hesitation. No regret. The next day, I found a thick envelope in the mailbox. Sent by post. No sender listed. But I recognized the handwriting instantly rounded, slanted, unmistakably my mother's. I opened it. There was a handwritten letter. And a few additional pages from Dad and Jaden. The very first line from Mom made me pause longer than I expected. If you're reading this, please don't tear it up right away. Then she began to tell me what had happened. That Sophia, while driving the Tesla to meet friends, lost control and hit a signpost. No one was hurt, but the car was badly scratched. The repair bill came out to $8,000. Sophia didn't sleep for nights, crying, saying, "No one ever taught me how to drive properly." Jaden had a fight with Dad because he was asked to clean his room. For the first time ever, the boy yelled back, "If Isabel's not here, I'm not doing it." Dad slammed his fist on the table. Mom collapsed onto the couch. The whole house sank into silence for a full week. "I never expected," she wrote, "that you were the piece keeping everything running. When you disappeared, we finally realized Sophia isn't the most capable. It's you." The letter ended with one final, crooked line. "If possible, give this family another chance." I folded the letter and placed it in my drawer. I didn't tear it up. But I didn't reply either. Not because I'm heartless. But because I've already given 100 chances. And they used each of them. Not to love me. But to keep me. Not with kindness, but with emotional debt. A few weeks later, I was invited as a guest on a small podcast called The Unheard Daughters, a space where women shared stories of being overlooked, exploited, or turned into shadows beside the favored child. I said yes, without hesitation. In a modest studio, under soft lights, mic close to my lips, I told everything. No embellishments, no metaphors. Just the truth. About the graduation gift box. About cooking dinner while burning with a 102-degree fever. About how they used the title eldest sister to mask the burden of the entire family. About the final email I sent like a declaration of liberation. And finally, I said, "This isn't about revenge. I'm not sharing this to make them feel ashamed. I'm sharing it so that people like me know they're not crazy, not overly sensitive, not selfish. They're simply human beings trying to survive in a system that taught them to forget they mattered." The episode spread faster than I ever expected. It was shared in hundreds of online groups. Thousands of comments poured in. I read every single one in silence. One girl wrote, "I cried listening to you. I was once given a set of pots, on the day I graduated with honors. A mother messaged me privately. I used to be like your mom, and now I realize I lost my daughter. I didn't reply to them all, but I held every word in my heart. Because I knew my story, small as it was, had become a spark lighting the way for someone else still lost in the dark fog of blind obligation. And that was enough. I didn't need anyone to turn around. I didn't need apologies anymore. I didn't need anyone to finally say I mattered. I only needed one thing. And I had it now. Freedom. A year has passed since the day I walked out of that house with a single suitcase and a heart full of wounds. Now, I live in a quiet coastal town in California. The sunlight here is softer, the wind gentler. As if the earth itself is whispering, you can breathe now. I rent a small apartment facing the sea. When I open the windows, I see waves rippling gently and seagulls soaring each morning. Inside, there's nothing extravagant, just a few potted plants, a wooden bookshelf, a bamboo work table, and rows of essential oil jars lined neatly on the shelves. My handmade skincare brand, Her Way, now brings in a steady income. Every day, I pack dozens of orders, slipping in handwritten notes. You don't need to be anyone else but yourself, and that's enough. I know you've been tired, but look at you, you stood back up. I haven't hired anyone. I don't rush to scale or chase metrics. I just want to keep it exactly as it was meant to be, a healing space for me, and for the ones who were once like me. On weekends, I write blog posts retelling each fragment of my journey back to myself. Some posts barely get read. Some trigger hundreds of women to write and thank me. But to me, the numbers don't matter. What matters is that I no longer have to hide any part of me. One afternoon in June, while I was rearranging the bookshelf, the mailman knocked. It was an old envelope. With slanted handwriting I knew by heart. My father's presence. I held the envelope in my hands. There was no storm inside me. Just one deep breath, enough to know I was ready to read it without trembling. I sat down and opened the letter. The first line stopped me cold. I'm no longer the man proud of a Tesla. I'm a father who was once blind. I kept reading. In the letter, my father spoke of the emptiness I left behind. How the house had grown quiet, even though it was still full of people. How my mother would sit and stare at the pile of kitchen towels no one replaced. How Sophia had started to realize that being favored didn't mean being truly loved. And even Jaden, the boy who once thought he was untouchable, was now working a part-time job to help pay for his tuition. I know, he wrote, that no letter can erase what you've endured. But if you've read this far, I just hope you understand that I've learned to see. To see you as a person. Not a role. Not a duty. Just Isabel, the girl who survived a house that should have protected her. End of 2. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant either. I simply folded the letter and placed it on the shelf, right next to the only photo I'd kept in this room. A black and white shot of me standing in a lavender field, hands clasped tightly around my own. No one else in the frame. No Sophia. No Jaden. No mom. No dad. Just me smiling. That photo was taken one summer afternoon, on a short trip to the mountains with Riley. They had looked at me and said, "You know, I used to worry you'd go back. But the moment I saw you standing here, eyes no longer searching for anyone, I knew you'd finally stepped out. And when I look at that photo now, I see a girl no longer carrying the weight of the world. Someone who's learned how to love herself without conditions. Without needing to be chosen. Without asking for permission. And I think, if there's such a thing as victory, then this is it. A quiet triumph. One that doesn't need applause. It's the moment you see yourself and smile. With no one else in the frame. I used to think, if I just tried hard enough, tolerated enough, gave up enough, then one day I'd be seen. That if I were just a little more obedient, a little more agreeable, a little less demanding, they'd finally turn around, hug me tight, and say, "Thank you for always being there." But no. No one gives you value when they're too used to taking. When every time you break your back to carry the weight, they assume it's just how things are. Some gifts don't need to be opened to reveal pain, because they were already wrapped in neglect. Some blessings sound like love, but they're really just ways to chain you to the role they want you to play. And some families, they force you to learn how to forgive yourself for all the years you lived without honoring your own feelings. I'm sharing this story not to complain, but so you know, if you've ever received a gift that didn't match the depth of your heart, you're not alone. If you've ever been called selfish just for wanting a little space for yourself, you're not crazy. If you've ever walked away from the dinner table with your throat tight, feeling invisible among the people who were supposed to love you, I've been there. And I understand. You don't need to keep holding it all in just to be worthy of love. You are worthy even if they never see it. You matter even if you do nothing for anyone. And if you've made it this far, I want you to know one thing. You are still worthy. Not because you're capable. Not because you've sacrificed. Not because you're the eldest, the daughter, the one who understands. But simply because you are you. Leave a comment below. I am still worthy. So I know you're here. So you can remind yourself you are no longer alone on this journey to reclaim your worth. And, maybe, someone else reading those words will find just enough courage to rise. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. The story may be mine, but the feelings, they might belong to many of us. See you again on another path, where you no longer have to ask for permission to simply be yourself.